Hello, and welcome to the 33rd Annual King County Legislative Forum for Developmental Disabilities. Leading tonight's land acknowledgement is Catherine Festa of the Haida Tribe. Catherine is also chair of the King County Native American Leadership Council.
Sinatla, good evening in Haida. I am the granddaughter of Elizabeth Collison. I am the daughter of Marina Jones. I am Catherine Festa, Haida Raven from the Double Fin Killer Whale Clan. As November is Native American Heritage Month, please explore your local tribes and their cultures. There are several websites that will help you locate your tribes. I've used native-land.ca. We hope this will strengthen our spiritual bonds and give us meaning to our lands and our people. Most tribes have their own websites with information about their events, cultures, and ways to support, such as www.dawamishtribe.org, which was the tribe where I lived and the one that I knew the best growing up. As an urban native, I had to do research and learn about my culture, as my mother lost her culture due to being put into a residential school from the age of 5 to 11. Finding my native roots and culture opened up many doors for me and made me proud to be a native. Most of the lands we live on, sleep on, and work on were in fact taken away from Indigenous people without their consent. This land acknowledgement recognizes where we all are, on lands inhabited and protected by Indigenous peoples from tens of thousands of years. Although land acknowledgements are powerful statements, they are only meaningful when they are coupled with authentic and sustained relationships with Indigenous communities. And so, I'd like for all of us to acknowledge and show respect to the First Peoples, the Indigenous peoples, our elders and ancestors, past, present, and future, on whose land we stand. Today, we offer deep gratitude to the Muckleshoots, Snoqualmie, Saikomish, Tulalibs, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, Puyallup, and Dawamish tribes, and to the Coast Salish people whose land and water supports us. Let us also commit to learning more about the histories and celebrate their culture and traditions that remain a vital part of our communities. We are still here. How
Thank you, Catherine. I'm Megan Cromar, and I'm the King County Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division Director. I'm a middle-aged white female with blonde hair just past my shoulders. Tonight, I'm wearing a black dress with white polka dots. I also come tonight, like many of you, as a parent. I'm the mother of a young adult and teen with developmental disabilities.
I am Holly Wu, and I am the Deputy Director of the King County Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. I am an Asian woman with wavy black hair that is a few inches below my shoulders. I'm wearing a red blazer with a cream-colored blouse. Megan and I will be co-emceeing tonight's event. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to King County Executive Dow Constantine.
Good evening. For 33 years, King County residents, families, and disability rights champions have come to this event to share their stories and learn more about all the ways people with developmental disabilities are central in our communities. And every year, our state legislators show up and listen and learn and share their priorities. Thank you for your support of people with developmental delays or intellectual and developmental disabilities. Thank you for joining us tonight. Our community and the whole world have been through an extraordinarily challenging past few years. But what we've learned in King County over the course of the pandemic is that when we work in partnership, when we use equity as our guiding framework, we not only create the conditions for recovery, but ensure we build something better than before. That's why it's incumbent on us not to simply restore our systems to old norms, but to strengthen and grow our community supports, informed by the people who navigate these systems and designed to reach all members of our community. King County's legislative priorities in developmental disabilities support this effort to lead in partnership and equity. At the county, we talk about our true north. Building a welcoming community where every person can thrive. It's about leading with equity as our guiding principle. King County worked closely with communities to ensure that the voices of people with disabilities and Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are centered in our priorities, in the priorities we'll discuss tonight. What we're hearing from families is that our systems must be culturally and linguistically relevant. Our workforce needs to reflect the populations we serve. Everyone deserves a full life filled with opportunities for contribution, connection, and community. We can all take pride in the fact that the state of Washington continues to be a nationally recognized leader for supported employment for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. However, our provider networks are facing a workforce crisis. Across the human services field, we continue to see workforce shortages. These shortages are a direct result of low reimbursement rates driving low wages, lack of representation, and the immense strain from the past few years pushing our systems to a breaking point. We need to recruit and retain highly trained staff, but funding levels don't provide for competitive wages and benefits. And we need to ensure that families, regardless of race, what county, zip code, or geography they live in, or what languages they speak, have access to these essential services. We saw overwhelming voter support for our Best Starts for Kids levy renewal. Voters turned out to approve the renewal through 2027 and grow Best Starts for Kids to help more county babies and children grow up happy, healthy, safe, and thriving. Through our early support for infants and toddlers work, we are connecting children with developmental challenges and their families to community supports. This year, King County experienced a record-breaking number of referrals. Over 5,000 children were referred to ESIT since October 2021. And while we've successfully increased the number of children receiving supports, ESIT providers will not be able to keep up with the high demand for services and retain staff without full funding support. Meanwhile, King County's School to Work program delivered best in the nation outcomes in placing young adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in jobs. Students with IDD who have paid work experience or leave school with a job are over 4 times more likely to remain employed and be included in community life after high school. Across our country, and here in King County, our communities are in a behavioral health crisis. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities have substantially higher rates of behavioral health conditions than the general population. Yet, equitable access to behavioral health services remains a barrier. In King County, we are committed to working with the state to improve behavioral health care access in our region. Alongside regional efforts like the mid-behavioral health sales tax, as well as the Crisis Care Centers levy I've proposed to create and restore crisis and residential facilities and invest in our workforce, the state's partnership to provide for behavioral health services and facilities is absolutely essential. State investments in core behavioral health rates and crisis services provide the foundation for comprehensive and accessible behavioral health treatment options that can meet the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our work is most successful when we lead in partnership and lead with equity. While our communities have borne significant challenges over the past few years, we have an opportunity now to strengthen our connections and systems to ensure all of us may thrive. Last year, I created a new role in the county's senior leadership team and named Anita Whitfield to serve as our first Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. In this role, Anita has led our equity and social justice strategy and oversees the Office of Equity and Social Justice. Welcome, Anita.
Hello, my name is Anita Whitfield, and I'm honored to be asked to share a few comments for your consideration today. I am doing my best to serve the residents of King County as the director of the Office of Equity and Social Justice and as the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer for King County government. I am here today filled with gratitude for our partners in community, the self-advocates, families, community members, and elected officials who show up for this work today and every day. We come together to work ardently to disrupt systems and structures that do not advance true belonging, equity, racial, and social justice. We also recognize that we can never achieve true disability justice or equity or social justice without addressing the many intersections each of us live in and cross into throughout our lives. Our brothers, our sisters, and our non-binary siblings of color who have intellectual and developmental disabilities face both racism and ableism daily. It is an uncomfortable and harmful truth that our systems do not yet account for the multitude of identities that make up a person's whole self. While our systems focus on an individual's disability, we regularly overlook the intersections of their unique cultural, social, and linguistic identities, where they experience further marginalization and discrimination. The very real impact of this truth is the inequitable delivery of services and the disproportionately lower health outcomes that result for the members of the disability community. The very real impact of this truth is the inequitable delivery of services and disproportionately lower health outcomes and life expectancy for these members of the disability community. For instance, immigrant, refugee, and non-English speaking families often experience significant obstacles locating the critical service that they need. The more we do to understand the impact of these unique but intersecting elements of each person's whole self, the more we work diligently to eliminate these barriers, the more we do to understand the impact of these unique but intersecting elements of each person's whole self, the more we work diligently to eliminate these barriers and build systems that are equitable for all of us, the more the disability community and all our communities can not only survive, but can begin to truly thrive. And that is why one of the legislative priorities we are emphasizing today is a powerful example of how we can make our systems more accessible for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, particularly in a region that is as multicultural, multiracial, multilingual as King County. We are asking our elected officials in the state legislature to increase funding for services that are linguistically accessible and culturally relevant so that all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families can meaningfully access services, programs, and much needed benefits. By increasing this funding, we can expand and deepen our outreach, create sustainable connections across communities, and reach people and families who are otherwise underserved, under-resourced, and left out. Our county's vibrant cultural, racial, and linguistic diversity is an asset to our community, but it is up to us to invest where needs are greatest and in community partnerships so that those who are most affected can have a say in solutions. The intersection of disability with other elements of our identities is one that all of us will face at some point in our lives, and our systems, our structures, and policies must begin to reflect this reality. And as we work together with our diverse experiences and identities on this critical path towards true equity and social justice for all people, we are grateful for you and for your partnership. Thank you.
Executive Constantine, we're so appreciative that you take the time to join us each year. Thank you for your remarks. And to Anita Whitfield, King County's first officer of equity and inclusion, we're proud to have you join us once again. We commit to disrupting systems and structures that do not advance true belonging, equity, racial and social justice. And thank you for centering the impacts of intersectionality tonight. The last 2.5 years have been unprecedented for us all. We're finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel from the pandemic. This year, so many of us experienced the joy of reconnecting with those that we love face to face. To quote one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, "Connection is why we're here." We're hardwired to connect with others. It's what gives purpose and meaning to our lives, and without it, there's suffering. Connection is the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and when they derive substance and strength from the relationship. Tonight is all about truly connecting with one another around the issues that mean so much to us. It's about listening with an open heart and truly seeing, hearing, and valuing each other.
Tonight, we celebrate our 33rd forum. This year, speakers will address 6 priority areas for King County. You will hear personal stories from several community members and how services have made a difference in their lives. Our division team members will be presenting the legislative priorities.
Hi, I'm Luz Locke. I am an Asian male with dark gray hair and wearing eyeglasses. I'm also wearing a blue color sport shirt and a dark blue jacket. I am a project manager with King County. All families and individuals should be able to access services that are meaningful in the context of their culture and provided in their home language. King County's first legislative priority for 2023 is increase funding for services that are linguistically accessible and culturally relevant. Invest in the interpretation, translation, cultural navigation, and other language and cultural supports so that all individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities or delays and their families can access services in the language and culture. When developing policy, we ask legislators to remember the stories that you will hear tonight and to use a racial, social, and economic justice approach to eliminate disparities and ensure language and cultural supports are in place to serve King County's diverse population. Next, we'll hear a story about the importance of language and cultural supports.
Good evening, legislators, and thank you to Early Support for Infant and Toddlers in King County for inviting me to participate in this forum. I am glad to be here. Hello, everyone. My name is Marcela Conrad. I am from the 30th District. I am a wife, a parent, and a full-time student. I have 4 children ranging from college to preschool. My oldest and my set of twins had needed speech therapy, and my youngest has sensory issues, so he's currently receiving occupational therapy. I have experience navigating in different agencies, and I know how hard it is to try to advocate for my children when the language is a barrier. I am a member of the Hispanic community. My community needs high-quality interpreters, translation services, and a family service navigator, because language is a big barrier to understand each other. And for my community to advocate for our children is even harder. I wish my children have received speech therapy in a more natural environment, means in our home language. Our home language is the foundation for our children. It's the base for them to learn everything else. And when my children receive services only in English, made it harder for us to practice and to support them. That's not a natural environment. Communication is the base to build relationships, and interpreters are the bridge that we need to work together to reach our goals. So interpreters should work parallel with the therapist, so our children receive the therapy in a more natural environment in our language. My community needs a family navigator. It's a necessity. Parents, we do feel lost in organizations. First, the language barrier. Then we don't know how programs work. We also don't know what other services they might have for our children. So we need someone to help us navigate the programs and help us to understand, to advocate for our children. When you are making your decisions, please remember the Hispanic community. We need to overcome the language. We need someone to help us navigate the services because we all want the best for our children. Our children with delays, they need extra support. That's why this is important for me. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us of the importance for services that are linguistically accessible and culturally relevant. Our provider network is committed to elevating the voices of all communities in King County. My name is Carla Lynch. I'm a middle-aged white woman with glasses, and I'm joining you from my home office. I'm a program manager at King County. King County's second legislative priority for 2023 is fund the Washington State Department of Social and Health Services Employment and Day Program Rate Study Recommendations, which includes increasing rates to stabilize provider networks to ensure community members' access to services and increasing the county administration rate. Washington State's employment services to persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities have consistently been recognized as the best in the nation. Unfortunately, the current statewide staffing shortage has impacted access to services, resulting in reduced or suspended services for many people with disabilities. The current reimbursement rate for employment and day program services has remained the same since 2011, while the cost of living has increased 20% over this same period. Similarly, for the past 30 years, the county administration rate for developmental disability services has remained at 7%. During this time, the complexity and scope of work associated with county-administered programs has changed significantly. Next, we will hear about the importance of increasing provider rates to support the delivery of quality services.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dang Huo. I am an Asian woman with dark hair and brown eyes. I wear glasses and a white shirt with a purple vest. And this is my son.
Victor.
Victor is
28.
years old, and he is very handsome young man. He is on the autism spectrum. We live in the district. Together, we're sharing Victor's employment story and expressing the need to support individuals like Victor. And Victor relies on his employment service to get a job for him, and more importantly, to keep his job and stay being employed. And Victor earns meaningful income and pay taxes too. Thanks to the continued support Victor got from his employment service, he has been working in his current job for 5 years. In the past 5 years, he has several close calls to be let go by his employer due to his behavioral differences. He relies on his job coach to provide supports to help him keep his job. His job coach also helped to bridge the communication gap, to educate Victor's supervisors and co-workers about autism in general and the special accommodations Victor needs. People on the autism spectrum take much longer to build a relationship with other people. Victor requires considerable job coach support to maintain his job. This support directly impacts individuals like Victor to be successful in their jobs. The providers cannot hire the staff at the rate they're currently being paid. It takes quite a bit of training in order for the job coach to understand how to work with people on the autism spectrum like Victor. Those job coaches are well trained in understanding autism behaviors, and they're skilled workers. In order to retain the job coaches and reduce the staff turnover, employment service providers need to be properly compensated. I work at a private company in the leadership team. For the past 2 years, we have increased our employee salaries by more than 20%. And yet we still have a lot of staff turnovers because they get job offers elsewhere, paying even higher. You can imagine how much of a challenge the job agency like my son's is facing to retain staff. My son's job is important to his success and allows him to be included in his community. Without the support from the employment service providers, Victor would not be able to work. Thank you.
Thank you for that powerful story. It shows us how important our provider network is to the community. I am Norma Renteria Lobo. I am a Mexican woman in my early 30s. I have tan skin, black curly hair. I'm wearing red glasses and a black sweatshirt with white stripes. I am the Early Support for Infants and Toddlers Policy and Language Access Lead at King County. The first 3 years of a child's life are a critical period for growth and development. Through partnerships, individualized education, and therapies, children's development is strengthened, including social, emotional, cognitive, communication, and physical abilities. Early Support for Infants and Toddlers, or ESIT services, help families address developmental delays and significantly reduce the costs and need for special education and other services as children with disabilities reach school age. King County's third legislative priority for 2023 is improve access and eliminate barriers to quality supports and services for families with young children 0 to 5 with delays and disabilities. Invest in coordinated efforts across systems to support child and family needs, including eliminating family out-of-pocket costs for early support and infants and toddlers, ESIT. This priority can be achieved by ending Washington's ESIT family cost participation requirements. Washington State is one of only 2 states in the country that currently requires parents to pay out-of-pocket for ESIT service. To do this, insurance companies must be prevented from requiring families to pay copays, coinsurance, deductibles, and other family fees for ESIT services. However, public funding will not cover all the costs of providing individualized ESIT services. So financial contributions from private insurance are still needed to enable agencies to keep these services available. This is why ESIT providers still need to be able to bill private insurance. It is important to protect ESIT provider agencies' ability to bill insurance for ESIT services. We are now going to hear directly from an ESIT family about their experiences accessing services.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anna Karlovska, and I'm from the Lake Washington School District. I'm a mother of a 3-year-old daughter with moderate to severe bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. Having access to regular therapy sessions with an early support specialist was important for my daughter's speech and language development. During our sessions, I got tools and recommendations on how to support her and improve communication skills in our daily routines. I'm also thankful for having a professional by my side during the 3-year-old transition. We moved from another country with limited knowledge about the education system in the USA. So in the beginning, the process was a bit overwhelming for us. Thanks to our therapy specialist, Christine Wilson, and other professionals, the transition went much less stressful. Last thing I would like to mention is translation services. Our home language is Russian, and my daughter didn't speak English at all back then. So it was very helpful to have an interpreter to translate conversations between me and my daughter to our therapy specialist. Accessing special services in time was crucial for my family, and I think other deaf and hard-hearing families should have this opportunity too, regardless of where they're living. When you're making your decisions, please remember my story. Thank you.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeannie Bell. I'm from the 21st Legislative District. I'm the parent of an almost 3-year-old son with developmental delays and neurodiversity. Improving access, eliminating barriers, and investment in coordinated care is essential to ensuring the most marginalized members of our community are reached. When Braxton was referred to early intervention care, he was significantly delayed in several areas. He couldn't express his needs, which resulted in behavior issues. He was easily overstimulated in social situations, and he could not transition from one activity to another without a significant tantrum. There were countless times that we just had to pack up and go home kicking and screaming. Some of these times were during activities that we had paid for, but had to leave early and forfeit our time. Braxton was often wrongly perceived as a problem child in social and daycare settings. ESIT tested him against a broad spectrum of developmental milestones, identified his needs, and created an appointment schedule that worked for our family. We started meeting and going over specific needs and issues. We identified his strengths and came up with strategies that worked well for him. We started a long and sometimes painful process of trying strategies geared toward his specific learning style. Sometimes they did not work at all. A lot of times they worked temporarily, and sometimes they were successful. We continued this work over an 18-month time span, and the improvement has been so successful that he will not need to continue with developmental preschool. The developmental gap was successfully closed. The tools we learn and practice have been life-changing for us. Recently, we were able to attend, enjoy, and stay through the end of several activities, including Baby Shark Live, baseball games, day at the fair, paddleboarding excursions, just to name a few. We can successfully shop at the grocery store together, run errands, eat out, and attend social gatherings. Now, instead of being perceived as a problem, Braxton often charms and entertains other adults with his sense of humor. Checkers at the grocery store and waiters at restaurants often say that he made their day with the way that he's learned to interact. Braxton and I were lucky in the sense we did not incur any out-of-pocket expenses for our services. I'm a single parent to him. Cost would have been a barrier. I could not imagine trying to navigate these issues on my own without support. I rely on community services and need them to be available not only for us, but for anyone who qualifies for this. When making your decisions, remember mine and Braxton's story. Improving access to reach our most vulnerable community members is important to us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Richard Wilson. I'm a program manager with the King County Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. I'm a white male with dark hair, wearing a blue jacket, and coming to you this evening from my home office. Before we begin, I want to thank the previous speaker for sharing your previous story about the importance of ESIT services. King County's fourth legislative priority for 2023 is fund services for students leaving high school, provide basic plus waiver services for state developmental disabilities administration eligible students leaving high school in 2023 through 2025, so they are supported in their journey beyond school. High school transition age is both a hopeful and uncertain time for all youth, and it is an especially critical period for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who require more planning and support. Thanks to investments in special education, DDA's Job Foundation Program, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and King County's School to Work program, youth are poised to enter adulthood ready to establish independence, contribute to the community, become taxpayers, and reduce dependency on other long-term government supports. However, without Basic Plus waiver services, many of these gains get lost after school ends. We must ensure Basic Plus waiver services are available for all high school transition age students. We'll now hear about the importance of transition services and need for ongoing funding beyond school.
Hello, legislators, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hunter James Smith, and I live in the 30th district. I wanted to tell you how important the Basic Plus waiver plan is to me. It has provided me access to become a tax-paying, productive member of society. I love earning my own money, allowing me to participate in things like Christmas gift giving circles or finally buying my mom dinner. I am extremely grateful to everyone who made this all possible, because if I hadn't received these services, I wouldn't have or be able to keep my job, leaving me isolated with very little social interactions outside of my home. So when you are making these kinds of decisions, please remember me, Hunter James Smith, and others like me who otherwise get lost and dropped upon entering adulthood and lose our support from the schools. Thank you for your time.
Hello, I'm Zaylar Chaletta. I'm a Black female in my 20s with purple hair that's tied up, and I'm wearing a black shirt with gold stars and moons on it. I am a confidential secretary at King County. I want to take a moment to thank the community members before me for sharing their stories. King County's number 5 legislative priority for 2023 is invest in the Housing Trust Fund and other revenue sources to support community-based housing solutions. These investments are needed to ensure people with IDD and their families can live in accessible, equitable, safe, and affordable housing in their local communities. A growing number of adults with intellectual and/or developmental disabilities, including those living with aging parents and families with moderate to very low incomes, are facing a crisis in finding homes that fit their needs and their incomes. A wide range of affordable housing options are needed so individuals with IDD are included in the community and can contribute socially and economically to the communities where they live. We are now going to hear from more community members about their experiences with housing.
My name is Elisa Midgley. I live in the 48th Legislative District, and I am the Director of Housing at Community Homes. Our organization has served individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities since 1996. When a dad wanted to create housing for his daughter so she could have the opportunity to live more independently, have a quality life, and be integrated into her community. The Housing Trust Fund has been a major resource used to develop our adult family homes. We have traditionally served individuals who are fairly independent, but for years, we have had many requests to serve individuals who have higher support needs. We are happy to say that last year, we opened our newest home that serves 5 wonderful residents. They are provided with a range of supports, including help with personal care, mobility needs, communication, intensive medical supports, and assistance to get out in their local community. It's been satisfying to see these residents settle in and make this house their home. It's also heartening to see the relief of their aging parents as they see their loved ones are well cared for. We regularly talk to desperate senior families looking for appropriate community-based housing. The need for housing is huge. We will hear from one of the mothers and one of the residents in our new home.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Gonzalez Peterson. I am from the 41st District. I am the mother of a 38-year-old daughter with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Housing is a very important issue for me because for over 37 years, I have been her main caregiver with help from my husband when it was needed. Time passed, we became older, and the job became more difficult. Then my husband died, and suddenly I was her caregiver 24/7. The situation was unsustainable, so I started to look for housing for her, and the only thing that I found was frustration, because most homes that gives this service don't serve people with multiple needs. They prefer to serve those that are independent enough to ride the bus, have a job, and do chores at home. My daughter requires supports to help her take care of basic needs like preparing food, dressing, and personal care, just to mention some examples. I am very grateful that I finally found a place for my daughter that is a home to live in and the support that she needs, and gave me the opportunity to have a space for myself in my golden age. When you are making decisions, please remember the people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, my story, and the importance of housing. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Blair Buchanan. I live in the 1st District. I love living in my new home because it's actually a house and not my parents. Just like my brother and my sister, I'm learning how to do more things for myself, but I also have wonderful caregivers who are there for me when I need help. Having housing has made my world a lot bigger. When I lived with my parents, it was just me and them. Now I have roommates, caregivers, and a lot of new friends. And I also feel safe knowing I can live here forever, even when my parents are gone. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for sharing the powerful stories about the importance of housing. My name is Jim Ott. I'm a program manager at King County. I'm a white male in my 50s. I'm wearing a gray shirt. King County's 6th legislative priority for 2023 is invest in intellectual and developmental disabilities, behavioral health supports. Individuals and families need a range of available behavioral health supports. The response to the growing behavioral health crisis must include intellectual and developmental disabilities informed, comprehensive and accessible options, in addition to out-of-home services. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities are part of the growing behavioral health crisis. They feel the impacts of COVID-19, the economic downturn, discrimination, isolation, and other factors impacting the behavioral health and well-being of our community. Yet, they have been left out of many of the proposed solutions. The crisis has highlighted the need for intellectual and developmental disabilities informed and responsive behavioral health services. investing in a comprehensive range of accessible intellectual and developmental disabilities informed behavioral health services and supports are needed to ensure that individuals and families are included in our community's response to the behavioral health crisis. We are now going to hear about the importance of behavioral health supports.
Hola, my name is Siri, and I live in a Torrey legislative district. I'm 24 years old, and I have a mental health disability. It is great to speak with you tonight. I want to talk about why investing in behavioral support for IDP people matters. I am a person with a disability. I have mental health issues. Getting support matters because I'm not defined by my challenges. People with disabilities are really have a hard time getting what we need to live a happy life. When we have behavioral problems, it makes it even harder to communicate what we need. Sometimes families have problems. We also need ways to safely leave our homes. People who need behavioral support are still humans. We deserve to be understood. We want to be happy. We want others to stand by us through our loss so that we can also celebrate good times. I am much more than my diagnosis. I'm kind, I'm fearless. I am loved by my family. I'm strong advocate. When you are making your decisions, remember my story and the behavioral health for IDP people matters.
Thank you to the community members who shared their whole selves and their stories tonight. Thank you to the King County Legislative Forum Committee for informing the development of the county's priorities. Thank you to the King County Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Support staff who have worked tirelessly for months to prepare for tonight's event. Thank you to our provider community for supporting the individuals and families that we serve jointly every day. Interpreters, thank you so much. And last but not least, thank you to our elected officials and all of you who came tonight and listened with an open heart. Your commitment to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families makes all the difference. This concludes our program. We look forward to seeing you again next year.